Thanks for attending another meeting of the Tucson Herpetological Society. The THS is dedicated to the conservation, research, and education concerning the amphibians and reptiles of Arizona and Mexico. We're situated in the Sonoran Desert of Tucson, Arizona. It is the traditional homeland of the Tohono O'odham people, the Yoeme or Yaqui people, and many diverse First Nations. As a result, it has many places named after amphibians and reptiles. For example, I work at the Desert Laboratory on Tumamoc Hill. The word Tumamoc is a transliteration of Chemamakdoak, or Hill of the Horned Lizard. And just across the way, in the Santa Catalina Mountains, the western face of Push Peak and Push Ridge looks like a giant toad, as you can see here. And so its autumn name is Babadoag, or Frog or Toad Mountain. The March issue of Sonoran Herpetologist is dedicated to Roger A. Repp, who sadly left us in November of last year. We attend many events throughout the year in Tucson for outreach. Most recently, we were at the first Congress of the Herp Association of the State of Sonora, a new organization that we are happy to cooperate with and extend friendship to. Here we have Dale Turner with Carlos Cota. They were talking about riparian habitat restoration. The meeting was held at the Centro Ecológico de Sonora, which is a zoo and nature center on the outskirts of Hermosillo. At this latitude, the Sonoran Desert is home to boa constrictors, a tropical snake species. And I wanted to photograph a specimen against the backdrop of the Sonoran Desert. When I mentioned this to one of the keepers, he told me to come the next day at 6 in the morning because there would be at least one boa constrictor on the fencing to the javelina enclosure, waiting for the white-winged doves to come in and pick up scraps of food that were not eaten by the javelinas. Sure enough, at 6 a.m., Dale Turner and Michael Ruff and I arrived to see this boa climbed up the chain link fence, resting its head on the top, waiting for the birds to arrive. We waited. No birds arrived yet. We got hungry for breakfast and went to eat. And when we came back around 9, it was still there. Here we have a photograph of the boa being shaken by the opening of the gate that the keeper does to feed the javelinas. It was completely habituated to this scenario. When we arrived around 9 in the morning, the boa was still there. And after about 10 minutes, we saw some doves arrive, but it began to get too hot. And so the boa retreated to the clump of grass below, not having secured a meal that day. A fascinating observation nonetheless. In late July, early August, we will be at the International Herpetological Symposium. And in October, we'll be at the Tucson Reptile and Amphibian Show and Sale. If you'd like to contribute to the forthcoming books on the amphibians, turtles, and lizards of Arizona, such as a photograph or an observation, you can go to arbooksaz.org and inquire further. Our presentations are recorded and archived on YouTube. And this is a lineup of speakers that we have for the rest of the year. Tonight's speaker is Dr. Earyn McGee. She's passionate about field research, herpetology, and social justice. In graduate school, she studied how drought affects lizards in arid environments, and also how to increase the representation of African American women in natural resources careers. She created a popular game, #FindThatLizard, to teach people about lizards and help them build greater appreciation for them. For her efforts, she's been recognized as a Forbes 30 Under 30 lister, a Grist Fixer, and an emerging leader by the Wildlife Federation. In her free time, she enjoys spending time with her friends, family, and her mini poodle, Puca. She sells her original ceramic ware to raise funds for her book in preparation called Find That Lizard. Tonight, she'll talk about creating her award-winning social media game, Find That Lizard, as an effort to take people into the field with her virtually. In this presentation, she'll discuss her research on one, the biological responses of riparian species facing climate change, two, the evolution of hashtag Find That Lizard, and three, the impacts of her science communication and outreach. Thank you.
We'll get into the Find That Lizard of it all, how I do outreach in unconventional places, and what you all can do to help. So, for this section of my dissertation, the main thing that I was looking at was how are perennial streams providing aquatic subsidies to riparian lizards, and if they are at all, and if they are, will lizard abundances be greater in perennial reaches, or will it have any impacts on individuals within species? So there's been quite a bit of research looking at how terrestrial systems impact aquatic ones, but not quite as much in the reverse. And so I was really interested, especially working in the southwestern United States, where we're going through a whole lot of drought, and what happens when our streams, our Tanahas dry up, what happens when, we have our monsoon season, but then the ponds and the little pools dry up much faster than we anticipate and that our aquatic insects anticipate. So I was looking at some of the research being done, and there were a few papers done by Sabo et al. And what they were finding was that Western fence lizards up in the Eel River in California were actually eating emerging aquatic insects. So they did both experimental um, uh, research on this, as well as observational studies. For my study species, it was found that these lizards are eating, all kinds of terrestrial insects, primarily like wasps, flies, cicadas, ants, anything that really flies in front of their faces. And so I think that we're all pretty aware of how our nation as a whole, but specifically the Southwest, is experiencing drought. And we're actually doing pretty well. And I'm based in Los Angeles right now. And a couple of months ago, California experienced a period of no drought within the whole entire state, which was the first in decades. As you can see from this map, we're back into a little bit of drought in some places. However, drought is a major issue that is impacting the southwestern US as well as many parts of the country as a whole. So for my study systems, I was working in the Chiricahua Mountains. So that is in the southeastern part of Arizona on the border of Arizona, New Mexico, and Mexico. And I was in the Sky Islands, which I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with, but if you are not, the Sky Island systems are various mountain ranges that are isolated by desert. So instead of having the water isolating the different bodies of land, you have desert. And so it will be really difficult for various species to go down from the mountain and across the desert and then up another mountain. So they end up being isolated, and you start to get all these new populations and new species. And that's what allows Arizona to be, one of the most biodiverse places in this whole entire country. And it's a particularly great place for studying lizards. So the lizard species that I was looking at were primarily Scopus yerevi, yarrow spiny lizard, Scopus virgatus, the striped plateau lizard, and then Urosaurus ornatus, the ornate tree lizard. And for my research, I had paired 100-meter reaches. So in each of the pair, I had a perennial reach, so that was one that had access to water year round, and then an ephemeral reach, so it dried out in the summer, but it did have some water throughout part of the year. And so I was hoping that the ephemeral reaches would kind of simulate stream drying, so I would be able to see some kind of difference between the lizards that had access to water year round and thus maybe more aquatic insects year round as opposed to the ones in the ephemeral reaches. So for my method, I captured the lizards via lassoing, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Once I captured them, I would take their mass, their sex, their length, their so snout to vent length, tail length. I would look to see if they had any regrown tail, any ectoparasites, mites, things like that. I was looking at lizard abundances across all of my study sites. And then to see if the lizards were eating the emerging aquatic insects, I had used these emergence traps. So in that bottom picture, you can see this pyramid shaped thing. So essentially, what I did was I made a pyramid skeleton out of PVC piping, and then I draped that with some really fine cloth mesh. And then I put pool noodles on the bottom of it. So in some areas it actually did float, although it was a little overkill for other ones you can see, even see here. And I put it in the deepest part of the stream. And so it had but there were some rocks there, so it wasn't even all the way down into the water, but it just helped for it to float in some areas where it could be a little deep. And then at the top of that pyramid, there was this bottle that I cut a hole out of. So when the insects went to climb up the sides to go from their larval stage to their adult phase, then they would smell the alcohol that was in that bottle and then they would fall in. So that's how I was able to collect my insect samples. And so I also had these in my ephemeral sites as well, just to be able to collect some of the more terrestrial insects that the lizards might be eating. And I use stable isotope analysis for my data to kind of see over time what it was the lizards were eating. And I was also trying to be as non-invasive as possible. Historically, lizard diet studies have been done either by gut pumping, which is essentially taking up water and stuffing it down the lizard's throat and making it vomit, or euthanizing the lizards and then just opening up their stomachs to see what they had eaten. And so I wasn't really comfortable with either of those methods, so I decided to go with stable isotope analysis. And you can see top image. It's missing a little part. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's missing a little part of its toe there. So a pretty standard way of permanent marking of lizards is to take toes. And so you typically only take three, one from 1 of 3 feet, and then that corresponds with a specific code. And I'm able to identify that lizard for as many times or as many seasons as I'm out doing research. Now, getting back to the lassoing bit, historically, that method is called noosing. But for me, as a young Black woman in the middle of nowhere, no service, no other Black people in sight, it just did not feel like inclusive language. And when I was an undergraduate, because I started doing research, right out of my freshman year of college, I didn't quite have the language to express why something like that really made me uncomfortable. And it wasn't until I really got into grad school and I had really, learned about environmental justice, social justice, and the mix of conservation with all of those things together that I was able to kind of find the language and just to find to find the courage to be like, hey, this makes me uncomfortable. And by that point, I had had a bit of a social media following. So I just kind of started a conversation on Twitter back when it was called Twitter. And I was just like, if there's a lot of, um, there are a lot of programs out here saying that it wants to have conservation be more inclusive and have more diverse people doing conservation work. And and to me, it felt really important that we also make sure that our language around what it is that we're doing is also inclusive if we want to include more people. And so I didn't come up with the term lassoing. It was kind of a group effort, but I did kind of lead the charge, and a lot of other people have now adopted that language as well. So if you've heard people say lassoing and you're kind of like, well, why are you guys changing it? That is one of the big reasons why of a lot of people are truly committed to having science and conservation and herpetology be more inclusive and have more people doing this very important work because we need to get everybody on board for conservation and herpetology. So, what did I find from doing all of this research? Uh, I did not see a whole lot of significant differences in the abundances of lizards between my perennial and ephemeral reaches. And you'll notice that it was just like one site for the Scopus yerevi that we have as an outlier. And then we also did not include Urosaurus ornatus into uh, this data because we just didn't have enough data points for them. We didn't catch enough of them to be able to do any statistical analysis for that particular species. However, looking at their mass in grams, we did see a significant difference for Scoloporus yerevi. And our perennial sites versus the ephemeral ones, although we did not see that same significant difference for Scoparus virgatus. And so we're just kind of curious as to, maybe why that would be. And it could just be something as simple as maybe we needed to get a higher sampling size because I did get capture more Scoparus yerevi than the virgatus throughout this study. So there's something going on there. We just don't know exactly what it is. And then looking at what it was that they were eating, the stable isotope analysis, we didn't see any significant difference between the terrestrial invertebrates from the aquatic ones. And you can see in all of these charts here is all the different and selection of the different aquatic invertebrates that we sampled for, and you don't really need to get too deep into it because none of them were statistically significant here. And so, even though we didn't have any significant differences in the abundances between perennial and ephemeral reaches, we did see significant differences in the mass sizes for Scopus yerevi at the perennial reaches versus the ephemeral ones. And then the lizards were pretty much eating the same thing at both the perennial and ephemeral reaches. And so, future research should examine what is allowing Scopus yerevi to do slightly better. And part of what we think is that if you've been to the Chiricahuas, it's really beautiful. It's pretty abundant with invertebrates, and since all of these species are pretty much sit and wait predators, it's not that they're specifically targeting any specific invertebrates that we can tell so far. It might just be that there's plenty for them and to eat, and whatever flies in front of their face is what they get, and that is just kind of that on that. So getting back into Find That Lizard. This was born from my desire to selfishly see more people like me out in the field. And when I started this game, I was a master's student. And so I didn't have a whole lot of funding to actually bring people into the field with me physically. But I saw what people were doing and telling stories on social media. And so I was like, well, maybe that's something that I could do. And so one day I was just out in the field. I had seen this lizard in one of my study sites where we didn't have a pretty high sample size. And I was like, all right, we got to go catch her. It was one that we had already caught, and we were just catching it to see if we had seen any differences in mass from the previous time that we had caught her. And so I was tasked with going to get her, and she made me run. I was chasing after her throughout the whole entire study site. I'm just like, how does she have the energy? Because I'm getting winded, I'm getting worn out. And it gets to a point where I kind of just stop and I lost her. I'm like, where did she go? And I'm scanning the area. I look over my shoulder and there she is on a tree. Since she had been previously caught, she had this bright orange five. Paint marking on her back, and that kind of broke up her camouflage. And so what I did was I took a picture, then I went and caught her. And then later on that evening, I had posted about that to Twitter. And a couple of people commented on that post, and I was like, you know what? I got something. And I don't know what it was that was in me that was like, this is it. But I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna just try it, see if it sticks. And that is kind of how Find That Lizard was born. And I was like, all right, this is a way that I can teach people about lizards. And then I can also, show them that a Black woman is a herpetologist and that this is something that Black people do because um, historically, Black people have been excluded from natural spaces for both recreation and for professional occupation. And so to be able to go turn that around and be like, no, we're supposed to be here is kind of a really big deal. And so I just was like, let me just do something and I'll try anything until it works, essentially. And so that's how Find That Lizard was created. And since then, I've had people tell me that they use this in their classrooms. They use it in libraries. They do it as bedtime with their kids. They do it as a drinking game with friends. I've had people tell me that, that they didn't really appreciate lizards or reptiles before this game, and sometimes they might not like them, but they will tolerate them being around. And I will take that as a win. I try to always work with people where they are and just take them to, maybe the next step. I don't have to take them to all the way from I hate lizards to lizards are the best thing ever. I'm going to go get it tattooed. Just being able to be like, I understand why they exist and they may or may not be kind of cool, maybe. To take them to that next step is really important because all of this is a journey and you just kind of have to guide people from where they are to that next step. So, why are we doing all this? This is me when I was a kid. I've always been interested in animals. Then I went on to college, did the environmental biology scholars program. And then I did an REU program with the Blandy Experimental Farm. And it was my turn to give back. And so then I started to do uh, volunteer work with the Doors Do Conservation Scholars Program. And I worked as a graduate student mentor, and I served three different cohorts of students through that program. So for me, as you can see, I was the recipient of mentorship, and then I was the person who was being the mentor. And so this has always been something that has been really important to me, and I'm always looking for new ways in which that I can give back to people because I really enjoy being out in the field. So as I mentioned earlier in this presentation, that I started doing field work when I was right after my freshman year of college. And I just found so much joy in being out in the field and catching lizards and answering, these really interesting questions like, how much for undergrad, I was looking at how much movement these lizards were doing within their range. And it seems like such a simple question, something that you can just easily Google, but people were actually giving me money to do this. And I just thought that that was phenomenal. And it blew my mind because I had never thought prior to college that that was something that I would be able to do. And so I wanted to just be able to share that joy and that excitement with others. Um, and so I, as I said, I like to find different ways that I can give back to my community. So another way that I have been doing this is I created the hashtag Find That Lizard Scholarship. And so far, we have had two iterations, two scholarship cycles this year and last year, and we have our seven recipients. And so far, I've been able to give out almost $6,000 in scholarships. And so these things are really important, even though they are micro grants, a little bit of money really does go very far, and it does help for, the herpetologists coming after us to be able to do the work that is necessary. So for example, Dr. Tharusha, she is kind of short, and it's really difficult for her to find the appropriate field gear that she needs in order to do the research that she's doing. And if any of you guys are in the field, you know that it makes a really big difference when you have gear that works and it fits you. It will make a trip it will take a trip from being absolutely miserable to something that is at least tolerable, if not enjoyable. Um, for Zandrea and Leah, it helped them finish their coursework through paying tuition. For Samora, she is doing her own outreach around herpetology, and we can never have enough outreach. Amelia is from Mexico, and she is doing research with undergraduate students. And then Claudia is from Ecuador, and she's also doing research with undergraduate students. But what's also really cool about Amelia is that she is creating a conference, a herpetological conference with her university. And so that's what she'll be using her funding for. And then Maddie is 12, and she requested some money to be able to do a course with the Amphibian Foundation. So she's doing their junior master herpetologist course. And I've had a lot of support from many organizations, and all you really have to do sometimes is ask people for help, and they will. So, for example, for Tevas, they actually donated $1,000 to the scholarship last year, which was pretty amazing. Ali Ward of Ologies, she did a talkathon with me on Instagram, which got a lot of people to donate to the scholarship. And she also donated herself. Both Skype scientists and the Ecologic Institute really helped me out by being fiscal sponsors. And so these are relationships that I have been building over time. And when people believe in what it is that you're doing, they are really happy to help you give back and be a part of something like this. So I also wanted to really find that lizard not just be something that's off on social media, because even back when it started, it was something that I wanted to have people physically be involved with, but I just didn't have the resources or the know-how. And also, maybe not even all the confidence necessarily, because some of these things still don't really have all the resources. I just kind of am like, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to just start doing things until it's done. And then things somehow happen. So I am also a ceramicist and someone who makes pottery. And so I was just kind of like, all right, how can I mix, find the lizards with the pottery? How can I do something in person? And so I came up with these lizard art walks where I partner with a local nature center or nature organization. So I actually just did one with the Friends of the Los Angeles River. And I take people on these mini hikes and we go out, we learn about lizards, we learn how to identify them, we learn how to find them, we learn about their ecology as an opportunity for people to just talk to a herpetologist, because not everyone has the opportunity to even talk to a scientist, a professional scientist. And so it's a really fun day. And so that's kind of the first part. And then the second part is we sculpt lizards out of clay. And because I have a kiln, I glaze and fire the pieces for them when it's done. And so for this, I also have had multiple partnerships as well. So shout out to Southwest Park because they have really been supporting me through this since its inception 2 years ago. And then the nature centers that I've worked with. And then Teva's also donated shoes to all of my participants last year, which was really great because, again, you give some people something to make them feel good, and they're gonna keep coming back to doing the things that you're doing. So I have just a quick video because I think we have a few minutes to watch the video that kind of really sums up all the work that I do with these lizard art walks.
So today on our lizard art walk, we're gonna walk around the Stone View Nature Center and we are gonna look for lizards. I'm gonna teach you about identification. I'm gonna teach you about how I look for them. See any more lizards? My favorite part of it is just like seeing them because it's like that is like one of the challenges. But then also when I get to like catch them because it's just like it's kind of like an ego booster. I'm like, yeah, I caught that. Is definitely a skill that you have to learn. But I love being outside. I really love observing nature in general. Because like I was always interested in things like, how do birds fly in the rain? How do rabbits survive in the snow? How are these different animals living outside? And they don't live in a house like the rest of us. I was in grad school and I wanted a way to really connect with people and share my love for lizards while also increasing the visibility of Black women in the field of herpetology. And I had very little resources. And I was like, what is a way that I can bring people into the field with me without spending money? And so then I turned to social media and I created this game, Find That Lizard, which is on my shirt. I just get really excited to be able to go out and make observations about nature and understand what's happening in general, because that's what I always wanted to do when I was a kid. So I'm fulfilling my childhood dream in that. Yeah.
All right, so those are the lizard art walks. And then being in unexpected places. So, pop-up markets, cultural events, pop culture conventions, art fairs. So something that I started doing is, of course, incorporating lizards into my ceramic motifs. And hopefully you guys can see this. So I started out trying to make this bigger so I can see there we go. I can see what it looks like on the screen. I started out making kind of like these sculptural lizards, and this one looks pretty good. This is after like a year and a half of practice. And this is about as good as I got. And I was like, you know what? It's taking too long to be good at this. I'm gonna stop that now. And then I decided to move on to something like this instead. So I actually spent forever putting a bunch of tiny dots on these pottery pieces. And I was like, you know what? If I can make something that really is reminiscent of the skin of lizard, their scales and things like that. That is was a lot easier for me to do, and it was a lot more recognizable species to species. And so when I would go out to these places, as you can see on my picture here, I would just have up these flyers about the lizard species that I had made pottery about, and people would actually come up and they would sit there and they would talk to me for 10, 15, 20 minutes about the lizards and uh, why they were cool about the pottery. They would be really intrigued and, pick things up. And that is just another way to really engage with people. As far as like the popular conventions, I actually sit on every year on San Diego and LA Comic-Con panels. And I'm able to talk about lizards in the panel. So for this year, I'm actually going to be on a panel about WETA workshops and the way that they create ecosystems and all the creatures and things that they create. So I'm gonna throw in some lizard things there. We talked about Jurassic Park one year and things like that. And typically, those panels tend to be standing room only. We have like lines going down the hallway, and people are really interested, even at those kinds of places, in learning about science and all of these things that we do, because that's something that really it informs all of the media that they're consuming. So of course they have some kind of interest in it. And we're able to answer those questions because again, we take it sometimes when we're around scientists all the time, we really do take it for granted that people are able to talk to scientists, but that's not the case. A lot of people really don't have scientists or, special knowledge area experts within their lives outside of these touch points. And so it's really important for us to get out and to really engage with the public so they can understand why all of this work that we're doing, why their taxpayer dollars are going to these things, and why it's so important. Um, so yeah, and and honestly, outside of all of that, it's also just a lot of fun. I enjoy doing these things. I like talking to people. I like telling them about what it is that I do and why lizards are just so cool. All right, so how can you help? I'm always looking for new brand partnerships. So if you know of anybody, please send them my way. I'm always applying for grants. So if you want to help me write some grants, that would be great. I'm always looking for people to help me with newsletter ideas, story ideas for Find That Lizard, because it's not just me posting the picture. I'm actually typically writing these blog posts about the lizards and breaking down some really interesting information from actual research articles because being able to read an article is a skill that not everybody has. So if I can just make it down into digestible pieces for people, then they're actually getting that new information coming in. I'm always looking for a new Find That Lizard photo. So you can go on my website, erinmcgee.com, and if you have a photo that you think would be a good challenge photo, please send that in. And then also, I am writing a Find That Lizard book. So I already have a book deal with the publisher, Weldon Owen. And I'm at the point now where all the writing is done. I just have to go out and get the pictures of the lizard. So I am always looking for a good herping trip. And then all of my information is down there at the bottom for you to be able to contact me either on Instagram or Blue Sky. And then also my email is there, and then my website is there. And then with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Erin.
Yeah.
So maybe I missed it, but could you explain a little bit more what isotopic analysis is and uh, what it tells us? I think it's a really cool technique, um, and yeah, it'd be great for others to learn about that.
Absolutely happy to do that. So, isotopic analysis, um, I think one of the easiest way to think about it is like with if you think about with ancient things and they're doing carbon dating. And so with carbon dating, they're looking for a specific type of carbon that's found in whatever bone or archaeological thing that they dug up. And so that's kind of a similar thing with stable isotope analysis, is that we're looking for a specific type of carbon and nitrogen that is within the invertebrates as well as within the lizards. And so so then I have a graph of all the different data points for each type of invertebrate. And it tells me about where on the graph, on one side you have the carbon, on the other side you have the nitrogen, and then it gives a point for where that type of invertebrate is. And so if it is close to like if that is above the lizard, close to the lizard, then I can tell that the lizards are eating those things. So it's all about just the different types of atoms that are making up the organisms. So hopefully that made sense for the stable isotope analysis. I'm happy to clarify more if it didn't.
Question on that.
Yeah.
So, and when you're looking at like your Delta 15 and your carbon values,
Hmm.
are you looking more at the trophic level of their prey, whether it's aquatic, terrestrial, or are you looking more at species identification, which would be pretty tough to do?
Trophic level. So I already know what all the species are beforehand. So when I would go out and collect all those bottles, I spent hours separating everything out. So I did take quite a few aquatic invertebrate classes, so that way I could be able to actually know what everything was. And so I would separate it out first, and then by my sites. And so for say mayflies, for example, in site one in the perennial area, I'd be like, all right, I have, 100 mayflies. They all go into one container. I would dry them out. And then, because they have to be like really dry to go through the stable isotope, like the actual physical analysis. And so I would dry them up, crush them up, and then I would give them to the stable isotope lab, and then they would give me back that those data points, which would tell me its trophic level. So yeah, so I was looking at the trophic level, not the identification of the invertebrates themselves.
Maggie wanted you to go back to your contact info.
Yeah.
Have you been able to meet Tyrone Hayes?
No, not yet, but I would love to.
Seems like the ultimate hero.
Yeah, that would be a great meeting when it finally happens.
Have you been in contact with him?
No, I haven't. Yeah.
Yeah. How often do you make Gila monster pottery?
I make it I'm starting to make it more so that like these ones were actually these are my test tiles where I was just testing the concept. So planning on coming out with like a line of these, a bunch of like planters, mugs, bowls, things like that. I try to do a lot of functional stuff. I'll probably throw in a few just non-functional artsy pieces in there as well. And then I also do kind of like made to order stuff.
Awesome. And how would we go about shopping for them?
Yeah, if you send me a message on Lassoed Ceramics, so that's my Instagram, Lassoed Ceramics, then that is kind of like the best way. Or you could send me just an email to afroherper@gmail.com.
Well, there's some beautiful bowls. I didn't know they were that big until I saw that photo.
Yeah, it took a while to do, but it's a lot of fun and it's really tactile and it draws people in whenever I have them at the booths.
Or-
Yep.
So I have a person I'd like to introduce you to
Hmm.
that I think you would find very helpful and in many regards. His name is Wally Van Sickle. He's from Fort Collins, Colorado. And I was on his board when he first started an organization called Idea Wild. Idea Wild now for the last 35 years has been giving out small grants. And you're right, you know, a pair of binoculars, an outboard engine can make all the difference. And
Absolutely.
they always parlay into bigger grants, bigger support. But they just hit a milestone, you know, just giving out every year, you know, about 20 small grants,
Hmm.
$1,000, $2,000. They reached the $2 million mark. So $2 million to thousands of small studies is made a tremendous impact on young biologists and researchers around the world. So I can give this information to Robert if you'd like to contact him, because I think he could give you a lot of hints. He's also a good artist, and he puts together a phenomenal newsletter kind of representing the studies that have gone every year.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Please do.
Well, unless there's any other questions or comments, let's see. Nope. Ben says, I'll admit that I was unable to find the striped plateau lizard in the photo that you shared earlier. Could you please point out where it was?
All right, let's see. At the very beginning, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So,
Uh, so the lizard was right here. It blends in really well because it's pretty much the same color as the dirt,
oh, you said the one after that.
the one after this.
Oh, I think it was your Twitter post, first one, how it started.
Uh, oh, and this one. Okay, let's see. Um,
Yeah, I
can you even This picture is really difficult because it's kind of pixelated. It's like over here on this log somewhere, I think. Sometimes it's hard for me to find them if I don't even remember where they are. But you also might not be able to see it because this is not the full picture because this is the screenshot from Twitter. So it could be blocked off by part of the thing here. Actually, no, you can. It's right here. It's like at the where that skinny branch goes and connects with the uh fat log. It's right in that V part, but because the picture is kind of pixelated, um, it's kind of difficult to see. So this was one of my first find that lizard photos from the very beginning. And as you can see, they have improved over time. They were not that looking back on it, I was like, woof, y'all are some real ones for sticking with me because these pictures they needed some help.
You
I was not a photographer and I had to do a lot of self-teaching on those.
started on advanced level.
Right.
But that's good practice for what most of my friends send me. hey, what is this? And it's like, I can't even, what?
Right.
A blurry brown snake or
Mhm. Something that darted out the picture. So you only got a tip of the tail left.
well, Erin, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know it's quite the journey from work to home and in LA, and uh, you know, you
Yeah,
should just
well,
want to get home and relax. And we appreciate you taking the time to tell us about what you do. And I hope that this might lead to some cool opportunities, it looks like. So um, we will be in touch.
awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.